How's it going, everyone? This is Mike. Welcome back to another episode of Movies from A to Z. And today the letter J stands for this historical drama from Warner Brothers in 1939. It's called Juarez. Or I guess you could pronounce it the lazy American way and say Juarez if you want to. Paul Muni, Bette Davis, and a great cast of actors along with them. As I've said, an historical drama. It takes place in the 1860s when the Emperor of France, Napoleon III, played by Claude Rains in a great performance, has invaded Mexico and is trying to carry his empire over to the New World, right? Well, he's trying to do this while the United States is involved in their own civil war, and they are unable to enforce the Monroe Doctrine. So he thinks that if he establishes a monarchy in Mexico, if he just takes a European monarch and places him in Mexico, that will circumvent the United States trying to enforce the Monroe Doctrine. So that's what he does. He picks one of the Royal Habsburg families members and names him Emperor Maximilian I. It's played by Brian Aherne, and sends him to Mexico with his Empress Carlotta, played by Bette Davis. And these two people think that they are going to be welcomed by the Mexican people because they have been told that there was a vote and that most of the people in Mexico are in favor of a monarchy, as opposed to being in favor of the democratically elected president of the country, Benito Juarez, played by Paul Muni, who was a full-blooded Mexican Indian with no European blood. So the emperor and his wife believe that they are welcomed by the people, and it's not until after they get there and they try to start ruling the country in a very benevolent, loving way because they care about the Mexican people, they find out that they have been duped by Napoleon. And the emperor decides to abdicate. He thinks that's the right thing to do. His wife, Empress Carlotta, tells him not to do that. She decides to go back to France and confront Napoleon with his treachery. So there's a lot of conflict going on. A lot of this is basically just one long conversational scene after another, interspersed with action scenes of the Mexican rebels trying to, defeat the armies of France and the monarch, and a lot of talks involving the racism of people who are against Benito Juarez because he is an Indian as opposed to being a European, and a lot of the drama is provided by Bette Davis as the Empress Carlotta, because she gets to do a terrific scene where she is confronting Claude Rains and making him cower because she's so forceful and so loud. And then she gets to go mad, and nobody goes mad quite like Bette Davis, and it's probably the best thing in the film. So some of the other actors we have in here, we have John Garfield playing one of the Mexican rebels. We have, as I said, Claude Rains as Napoleon III, Donald Crisp, Joseph Kalia, Gail Sondergaard as Napoleon's wife, Empress Eugenie, Gilbert Roland, who happens to be probably the only Mexican, the actual Mexican actor in the entire film. Everybody else is non-Mexican. Henry O'Neill, Lewis Calhoun. Great movie, directed by a man named William Dieterle. And Juarez had kind of mixed results when it came out. It had mixed critical reception, and I don't think it was a big box office hit. But looking at it today, it's really a very moving story. Now, this was based on a play which had been based on a novel, and when you do these historical dramas, the historical part of it sometimes suffers in favor of the drama, so you have to take a lot of these so-called facts in the story with a grain of salt. But still, it's a very good movie. Great performance by Paul Muni. Bette Davis is wonderful. Let's see, she also worked with Paul Muni a few years before in a film called Border Town, in which she also got to do a mad scene. So Bette Davis knows how to go mad. She knows how to get your attention. Now, it was a big year for Bette Davis. Of course, 1939 is considered by a lot of movie fans and critics to be the greatest year of American films in all of history. That's the year of Gone with the Wind and The Wizard of Oz. Bette Davis had 4 films, major films, in release that year. Now, when she agreed to do this part in Juarez, which really is kind of well, it's considered to be the starring role, the female lead, but it's actually, this film is very much an ensemble piece, so her part is not actually that large, but she wanted to do it, and she was in the process of making Dark Victory. So, and she was also under a lot of stress because she had just been divorced from her first husband. She was feeling ill. So when she started doing this film, she actually came down with a very bad case of pleurisy and could only work for a few hours a day. But she came through. And then she also had 2 other films that came out later that year, The Old Maid, and finally her first color film, The Private Lives of Elizabeth and Essex, where she played Queen Elizabeth I opposite Errol Flynn. So big film for Bette Davis, and big film for Warner Brothers. And a lot of people may not have seen this. I don't know, maybe you have, but it's definitely worth a look. Yeah, I think it's available now. Yeah, this is the Warner Brothers archives, so there are no extra features other than the trailer, no scene selection or anything like that. And it's also kind of a long movie. It's 125 minutes long, but worth looking at. Okay, so I guess that's all I want to say. Juarez, Bette Davis, Paul Muni, can't go wrong with that. Okay, take care.